Nakapag-midterm exams na po ba with other classes?
Yes, tapos na po sa iba.
Tapos na. All right. Okay. So, let's start. So, recap ulit. Recap of what we have discussed the previous meetings that we have. So, nung first meeting natin, napag-usapan natin ang auditing. Diba? So, alam niyo na to kung ano yung verbatim ng auditing, ano yung definition niya, ano yung mga assertions, basic FS assertions na pag-aralan natin, as well as the type of opinion or level of assurance that an auditor is giving to the financial statements. Nung second meeting naman natin, napag-aralan naman natin yung types of audits saka mga auditors. We also discussed the need or the reason or the significance bakit kailangan ang financial statement audit. Pinag-aralan din natin yung theoretical framework of auditing. Nung third meeting natin, napag-aralan naman natin yung the 10 generally accepted auditing standards. So ito, nahati ito sa 3 clusters, the general standards, standards of fieldwork, and then standards of reporting. And then nung fourth meeting natin, we also discussed the other professional standards aside doon sa generally accepted auditing standards. So dito natin napag-aralan na ay meron pa lang iba pang standards like Philippine Standards on Auditing. Ito yung ating pinag-aaralan habang tumatagal yung ating discussion sa audit. We also discussed or tackled the PSQC, which is now called PSQM, PSRE, PSAEs, PSRS, Philippine Auditing Practice Notes, saka mga alerts issued by the AASC. On our fifth meeting, we discussed about the responsibilities of an auditor pagdating doon sa errors, fraud, and non-compliance. And then sa sixth meeting natin, we discussed the audit process. Ano ba yung audit process in accepting an engagement for a new client? Ano naman yung process ni auditor kapag mag-accept siya ng engagement, audit engagement kapag recurring client? Diba? So napag-aralan din natin dito ano yung difference nung kung ikaw ba yung dating auditor or ikaw ba yung new auditor. So yung tawag sa iyo, successor auditor kapag ikaw yung bago, or kapag hindi na ikaw yung auditor, predecessor auditor. And then kapag ikaw pa rin, continuing auditor ang tawag sa iyo. And then yung pinaka-last na diniscuss natin the last time is the audit process part 2, on which we discussed the steps in the audit process. So dito napag-aralan natin, napag-aralan na natin itong accepting an engagement. Although we made an introduction to audit planning, pero ngayon pa lang natin to itatakal talaga ng husto. And then we also discussed the financial statement assertions. Depende kung ano bang pinag-aaralan natin, FS assertions or assertions in general or assertions as through transactions and events, assertions as to account balances, and assertions regarding presentation and disclosure. Ayan. Alright, tapos ito din, ating pinag-aralan ang audit procedures. Okay, so do you have any more question with the previous discussions that we had? Class, can you still hear me?
Yes po.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So now, let's go with our topic, audit planning. So ano ba yung audit planning? Ano yung audit planning? Anyone from the class, what is audit plan? What is audit plan pala? Meron po bang idea what is an audit plan? Yes, Jane.
So sa audit planning po, malalaman po kung ano po yung scope ng audit procedure na gawin po.
Yes, no? So, syempre, tama po yun. Audit planning involves procedures, diba? It involves procedures and processes for an auditor to conduct it's audit, smooth, di ba? And flowing. Diba? So yan yung ating parang personal definition. Why? What is an audit planning? So audit planning involves procedures and processes for an auditor to conduct its audit smooth and flowing. Parang walang problema, walang makikita na aberya, hindi magtatagal yung audit, mabilis matapos. No? So ibig sabihin, kapag pinagpaplanuhan natin ang audit, um, lahat ng kailangan natin, lahat ng mga dapat nating gawin, na i-prepare na natin. So, maganda pala kapag pinagpaplanuhan lahat. So, ganun din kapag umaalis tayo, kapag meron tayong pupuntahan, before we go to a particular place, kung sabihin natin for work purposes or for family reunions o kaya para lang gumala, pinaghahandaan natin. Siyempre, iniisip natin ilang araw ba tayo doon. Pupunta tayong Siargao, ilang araw tayo doon, mga 5 araw. So, siyempre, ang iisipin natin, ilang damit yung kailangan natin. So, 5 araw yon, meron tayong 5 araw na pantulog. 5 araw, ano yung mga activities na gagawin natin, lalangoy tayo. So, kailangan natin ng swimsuit. Kailangan natin ng trunks, di ba? Mag-snorkeling tayo, so magdala tayo ng snorkels. Mag-cliff diving tayo, di ba? Kailangan natin ng first aid kit. Baka merong masugatan. So lahat 'yon pinaghahandaan natin. So planning can be applied to our real life, hindi lang sa audit. So syempre, kung na-apply mo siya sa real life mo, sa audit, pwede mo ring i-apply yung plan. Yun, di ba? Yung pagpaplano. So, ganun din naman, di ba, sa management advisory services natin, do you still have that subject or tapos na po kayo sa management advisory services ninyo?
Meron pa din po.
Meron pa. O, di ba? So, meron pa kayo. Ilang subject ba yung MAS nyo? Isa lang or dalawa? Pinutol siya? Or pinag-compress na lang?
Dalawa po, sir.
Dalawa. All right. So, nasa second part na kayo ngayon.
Yes, opo.
Okay, all right. So, napag-aralan nyo na doon yung budget planning. So, syempre sa budgeting, pinagpaplanuhan din kung paano mag-create ng budget. 'Di ba? So, syempre, paano ba kayo mag-create ng budget? Pagpaplanuhan nyo yon, mag-uusap yung bawat department. Hihingi kayo ng idea sa sales department, magkano ba yung targeted sales nila. So, syempre, pagpaplanuhan, ito yung ano namin, ito yung kaya naming ma-generate. Ito yung target sales namin for this year or for next year. So, from that amount ng sales, doon naman mag-work yung mga expenses. Okay, ito yung kayang sales. Kayo, marketing, magkano ang budget ninyo? Sobra naman ata yan. Ito lang yung sales na ma-generate nila. Bakit ang laki ng marketing expenses ninyo? So, syempre, lahat pinagpaplanuhan. Ganon din sa audit. So, we have audit planning. All right. Okay. So, audit planning is the first standard of fieldwork. So this is the first standard of fieldwork. Ano ba yung first, ano ba yung mga generally accepted auditing standards natin? Ano yung three clusters na naalala natin, class? So anyone from that class? Ano yung three clusters ng generally accepted auditing standards natin? Anyone? Naalala ka po ba?
Yung tip.
Three clusters. So the three clusters that we have is the general standards, diba? General standards, standards of field work, and then standards of reporting. So these are the three major clusters that we have for the generally accepted auditing standards. So ano yung nandun sa general standards natin? So let's just go back. Ano yung meron doon sa general standards? You have
Tips, sir.
T.
Technical training.
That's correct. Technical training and proficiency. Ano pa?
Independence.
Independence and then
Professional care.
professional due care. So, naalala pa. And then sa fieldwork naman, standards of fieldwork.
Tayo naman po, sir.
Pi naman. So, what's with the pi?
Planning.
So, you have planning. Second one,
Internal control consideration.
internal control consideration. And then,
Yung evidential matter po.
evidential matter. That's correct, no? So, that's the standards of fieldwork. And then, last one is standards of reporting. Anong meron sa standards of reporting natin?
Dido po.
Dito. So, what's that?
Generally accepted accounting principle.
Yes, G for generally accepted accounting principle,
Inconsistency,
inconsistencies,
disclosure, and opinion.
disclosure, and opinion. So tapos na tayo dito sa sa may general standards na pag-aralan na natin to. However, itong general standards, ina-exercise kasi to on all parts of the audit. So babanggitin at babanggitin pa rin natin tong general standards. While ito namang standards of fieldwork, nag-umpisa na tayo. So ang una natin diyang pag-aaralan is the planning, which is what we are discussing now. That's why I said to you, to all of you, that audit planning is the first standards of fieldwork. Kasi yun nga yung nandito. Ayan. So ayan siya ang first standard of fieldwork from the word from the acronym PI. So, ano ang sabi ng PSA 300? So, ano ba ang PSA 300? Anyone from the class? What is PSA 300? Nababasa po ba? Yes. Jennifer. Yes, Jennifer. So, what is PSA 300?
PSA 300 is planning and audit of financial statements.
That's correct, no? So, PSA 300 is about planning. Diba? It's about planning an audit of the financial statement. So yan ang ating covered auditing standards pagdating sa audit planning. So ano ang sabi ng PSA 300 pagdating sa pagpaplano sa audit? Anong sinasabi ng PSA 300? Anyone from the class? Ano ba ang requirement? So ayun, ano yung requirement? Ano yung requirement ng PSA 300? What is the requirement of PSA 300 pagdating sa audit planning? Anyone from the class? Yes, Nico.
So sinasabi ng PSA 300 is kailangan daw i-plan yung audit para ma-perform siya in an effective manner.
Yes, no? So you should plan the audit or so that it must be well performed in an effective manner. So yun yung kanyang objective, 'di ba? So lagay natin dito, ibaba ko muna tong requirement. Ayan. So the objective of PSA 300 is to conduct an audit plan, diba? Or to plan an audit. Lagyan natin dito. Ayan. So, the auditor must plan an audit so that it will be performed in an effective manner. So yan yung sinabi ng PSA 300. So that is the objective of audit planning. So objective yun ni auditor, dapat mag-conduct muna siya ng audit planning so that everything is smooth and flowing or that the audit has been performed in an effective manner. So syempre, yan yung kanyang objective. However, there are certain requirements na kailangan para masabing ang audit ay okay or it is conducted in an effective manner. Una na dyan na requirement ay dapat merong engagement team members. So there must be an engagement team members. So involvement of engagement team members. So bakit kaya isang requirement ang involvement of engagement team members? Bakit kaya, class? Why? Naalala pa po ba yung pinaka statement sa audit planning? Statement nung standards of fieldwork for planning. So ano bang sabi ng generally accepted auditing standards pagdating sa planning? Anyone? Naalala pa po ba? Anong sabi? Nakalimutan na po ba? Nakalimutan na po?
Adequately planned po. The work is to be adequately planned.
Yes, that's correct. The work, diba? The work for an audit, diba? The work for an audit must be, shall be adequately planned. Diba yun po yung sinabi? Tama po ba? The work for an audit shall be adequately planned and assistants, if any, are to be properly supervised. So ito yung sinabi mismo ng generally accepted auditing principles for the first standard of fieldwork. So yan na yan po. So ibig sabihin, kapag nagpaplano pala tayo for audit, kailangan natin i-consider yung audit staff members natin, o kaya yung audit team members. So anong tawag sa mga audit staff members or sa group ng mga auditors na magkakandak ng audit? Ang tawag po sa kanilang lahat ay engagement team members. So yan po yun. So kailangan i-check natin ilan ba yung kailangang auditors. Ilan yung kailangan yung auditors, ilan yung kailangan na magkakandak ng audit, 'di ba? So syempre ikaw yung partner. Ikaw yung audit partner. Sabihin natin kayo ay audit partner na sa isang magandang auditing firm. Diba? Hanapin na. Halika. Ayan. So sabihin natin si Nico Andre, siya na yung audit partner. Lagay ko dyan. Ayan. So pangalan ng audit partner ay si Nico. So si Nico Andre pala ay audit partner na. So anong audit firm ang audit partner si Nico? SGV and Company. So ngayon, syempre, si Nico mag-audit siya ng isang client. May audit palang client si Nico. So lagay natin dito. Ayan. Ang i-audit niya na client ay isang multinational company. So napakagandang company pala yung i-audit niya. So ang i-audit niya ay ang Nestle Philippines Corporation. So syempre dahil ang Nestle Philippines Corporation, isang malaking company, si Nico, ine-expect niya na medyo malaki yung degree ng scope na gagawin nila for audit. So ine-expect niya na marami siyang kailangang isama. Marami siyang kailangang isama na audit team members. So dalawa ang ilalagay niyang, or sabihin natin, maglalagay muna siya ng kanyang audit manager. So si Nico yung audit partner. Siya yung engagement partner. So audit partner is also known as engagement partner. Can you understand me very clear, class?
Yes, sir.
Alright, okay. So lagay ko dito, nilalagay ko na lahat ng terms para hindi na kayo malito. Ayan. So lagay ko dyan, audit partner or engagement partner. Ayan, nawala yung pangalan ni Nico. Ayan, lagyan natin dito. Ayan. So, syempre si Nico, maglalagay siya ng kanyang audit manager. So, sino yung kanyang audit manager? Mag-a-assign siya. Meron siyang isa sa magaling na audit manager. Ang gusto niya na i-assign ay si Feb. So, ang audit manager niya is si Feb. Lagyan natin dito si Feb. Audit manager. Ayan. Alright. Ngayon, nag-usap si Nico bilang engagement partner and then si Feb bilang audit manager. Pinag-usapan nila, ilan ba yung kailangan natin na team members? Ilan yung kailangan nating team members para masabing kaya nating tapusin yung audit within a short, reasonable period of time. Yan. Nakikita pa po ba yung aking screen?
Yes po.
Alright, so malinaw naman. Okay, so sabi ni Feb, kailangan ko ng dalawang audit supervisor. Kasi hindi ko kakayanin na ako lang yung magsusupervise para sa lahat. So syempre nag-agree naman si Nico bilang engagement partner. So sabi ni Nico, sige, okay lang yan. As long as we can do everything that we can do. So meron siyang supervisor. Audit supervisor na dalawa. Alright. Ngayon, ang isang audit supervisor will handle, so the audit supervisor will handle the assets. Diba? Assets audit. So, syempre, depende yung plano sa plano ng engagement partner and then the whole engagement team. Syempre, ang gusto ng engagement partner, o sige, paghiwalayin natin yung pag-audit ng assets saka liabilities audit. So, may isang nag-audit for assets, may isang nag-audit for liabilities. Yung stockholders equity, parang ang consideration nila ay madali lang naman yan. Okay na yan. Pag patapos na natin yung audit, saka na natin i-audit yung stockholders equity. Yan. So, ayan. Yung audit supervisor for assets, magkakandak ng assets, syempre meron din siya mga sa baba. So, sabihin natin, meron siyang mga audit associates. Diba? May audit associate siya. Yan. So, meron siyang audit associate na 3. Sabihin natin. So, merong isang audit associate there's one audit associate who conducts audit of cash. There's another audit associate who conducts audit of property, plant, and equipment. And then there's an audit associate who conducts audit of other assets. So lahat ng assets na hindi nabanggit, kasi cash at PP lang yung merong concentration dito, other assets dun sa isang associate. And then sa isa namang audit supervisor, ganun din. So meron siyang 3 din na audit associates. So yung audit associates na yan, pwedeng meron siyang senior associate saka junior associate. So depende kung paano gagawin ang isang engagement team, kung paano maglalagay ng tao. So sa liabilities naman, merong mag-audit ng audit of accounts payable, audit of trade payables na lang. Yeah. So merong mag-audit for trade payables, yung isa namang associate under the liabilities audit, mag-audit naman siya ng long-term payables. Tapos yung isa namang associate, magkakandak siya ng audit of contingent liabilities, provisions, and warranties. Yan. Sabihin natin, ganyan. Alright. So, ito yung mga audit team members na yan. Tapos lahat sila, mag-audit din sila for stockholders' equity. So, pwede. As long as matamaan. Yan. Halimbawa, for example, ganito yung whole engagement team ni Nico bilang engagement partner. And then si Feb, yung audit manager. So, ang paglagay or pag-appoint ng isang engagement team is a sole discretion of the engagement partner or the audit partner. Kasi ine-exercise ni audit partner ang kanyang, ano pong ine-exercise niya, class? Ano pong ine-exercise? Naalala pa po ba? Ano bang ine-exercise natin bilang auditor? Can you still hear me? If you can hear me, please press number 3. Ano po yung ine-exercise ng isang auditor? Nakalimutan na po ba? Ano po bang sabi ko? Anong ine-exercise ng auditor kapag
Independency.
Independence. Yes, pwede, di ba? Independence. Pero meron talaga siyang ine-exercise dyan. Aside from being independent. Kasi independence, ine-exercise mo talaga yan in the whole part of the audit. Whole process of the audit, kailangan ma-maintain yan ng auditor. Independence in appearance, saka independence in mind. Pero dito sa planning na to, yung pag-assign ng engagement team members at kung paano niya gagawin or paano niya i-appoint bawat isa, ano yung mga dapat gawin ng bawat isa. Ano kayang ine-exercise niya doon? Saan ine-exercise niya doon? Yes, Jennifer.
Professional skepticism.
Professional skepticism. Malapit na, professional. May professional na. Yes, Sophia. Yes, Sophia. Ano po yun?
Leadership responsibilities po ba, sir?
Leadership responsibilities. Yes, leadership responsibilities. Pero may hinahanap ako, yung professional. Yes, Sarah.
Professional judgment po.
Yes, professional judgment. So that is a professional judgment nung engagement partner. Kung paano niya i-assign, 'di ba? Paano niya i-assign yung bawat team members ng engagement team? Saan? Ano yung plano? Sino mag-audit for assets? Sino yung mag-audit for liabilities? Sino yung mag-audit for other aspects ng financial statements? For the or for the subsequent events, related party transactions. Ayan. So, si audit partner yung magsasabi. Kasi yun ang kanyang professional judgment. So, depende naman kay audit partner or engagement partner kung pwede ba niyang i-delegate yun kay audit manager or kay audit supervisor. Sabihin ni audit partner, yung iba kasi sabihin, okay, alam niyo na yung gagawin. Ha? So, kayo na bahala mag-assign kung paano i-audit yung iba-iba. Iba-ibang accounts sa financial statement. So, that is a call of the audit partner or engagement partner. Kasi in-exercise niya yung kanyang professional judgment. So, through the professional judgment, and as well as the leadership responsibilities nung audit partner, nakaka-create ng well-planned organization ng engagement team para mag-conduct ng audit sa client. So yan, let's say for example, ito yung setup nung engagement team member. So ang i-audit si Nestle Philippines Corporation. So, siya po yun. Ayan ang i-audit. So, syempre, ngayon, bago i-audit si Nestle Philippines, at least nakaset up na yung engagement team. So, meron ng audit partner, may audit manager, audit supervisors. Ayan. So, dalawang audit supervisors, and then meron pang mga associates. So, itong mga associates, sila talaga yung main na nag-audit. Sila yung hands-on. Sila yung nandoon sa actual field work sa pag-conduct ng audit. And then si audit supervisor, normally sila yung nasa office, hinihintay yung results ng pagkandak ng audit, yung mga findings na nakita ng audit associates. So audit supervisors and audit managers, minsan they do audit field work, pero depende yun sa sa plano ng buong engagement team kung kailangan pa bang pumunta ng audit manager pati ng mga audit supervisors doon sa fieldwork, mag-conduct ng fieldwork, or is it enough kung mga audit associates lang ang magka-conduct na ng audit fieldwork? Alright. Tapos kapag na-finalize na yon, kapag okay na, na-check na yung quality assurance ng audited financial statement, saka lang pipirmahan ng audit partner or ng engagement partner yung financial statements na in-audit. So yan po yung normal setup ng mga auditing firms. Alright. So that's why we need to consider the involvement of engagement team. So isa yun sa requirement ng PSA 300. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes po.
Alright. Okay. So isa yun sa kailangan na requirement ng PSA 300. So, sumunod na requirement na kailangan ni PSA 300 is number 2. So, ano naman yung number 2? Number 2 is?
Preliminary engagement.
That's correct. Preliminary engagement activities. So, ano yung preliminary engagement activities? Anyone from the class, what is preliminary engagement activities? What is preliminary engagement activities, class? From the word itself, preliminary. Diba? Ibig sabihin, pag preliminary siya, you have to consider these activities before the conduct of the audit. So, preliminary. So, ano po yung meron doon? Yes. Anyone from the class? Sorry, I forgot. Yes, Jane. Yes, Jane.
So, under po dun sa preliminary engagement activities po is yung mga performing procedures required under PSA 220, which is the continuance of the client relationship and the specific audit engagement po. Then sunod po yung yung compliance with the relevant ethical requirements. Then yung understanding the terms of the engagements required by PSA 210.
That's correct, no? So, tama si Jane. So, una, you have to consider the PSA 220. So, what is PSA 220? Ano yung sabi ni Jane kanina? So, PSA 220 discusses about quality control. Napag-usapan na kasi natin to the last or the previous meeting. So, PSA 220 discusses about the quality control. So, lakihan ko na lang kasi tapos na tayo dun sa ating mga engagement team members. Ayan. All right. Ayan. So, in preliminary engagement activities, you have to consider the PSA 220, which is the quality control. Now, ano nang tawag natin sa quality control? Quality management. Kasi meron tayong PSQM na, di ba? Dati PSQC. Yung PSA 220 is related sa PSQC number 1, which is now called quality management. So aside from considering PSA 220, you have to consider the ethical requirements. Ano yung mga ethical requirements na kailangan, 'di ba? So napag-aralan na natin 'yan. Balikan natin yung ating napag-meetingan the last time. So nasaan na tayo doon? Dito sa ating professional standards. So we have here PSQC number 1 or PSQM number 1. So kanina na sabi na rin natin yung leadership responsibilities, 'di ba? Nung hinahanap ko yung sagot na professional judgment. So may bumanggit ng leadership responsibilities, which is correct as well. Kasi kailangan nga naman ng leadership responsibilities nung engagement partner or ng audit partner para magkaroon ng magandang engagement team. And then, Next one is about the ethical requirements. So ito yung ethical requirements na napag-usapan natin. Ano yung purpose ng ethical requirements? To maintain the integrity of the audit and the auditor. So syempre, ito yung mga components ng ethical requirements. We have the integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. So, lahat ng ito dapat during the course of your audit na maintain ito ng bawat isa. Not only the engagement partner, but also the other members of the engagement team. So, bawat isa sa atin merong integrity. So, balikan natin dito meeting number 8 natin. Ayan. So, balikan natin yung buong engagement team. So, sa engagement team, ayan. Can you see my screen, class?
Yes
Opo,
po.
sir.
All right. So, sa ethical requirements, una ay kailangan ng integrity. Hindi lang pwede na ang may integrity lang is yung nasa pinakamataas, yung audit partner or engagement partner. The integrity must also be exercised by other members of the team. So it could be the audit manager, audit supervisors, as well as the audit associates. Lahat kasi dapat i-maintain yung integrity. Hindi pa pwedeng yung isa lang nag-exercise, yung iba wala ng integrity. Kahit naman tayo, di ba, bilang isang estudyante, bilang isang professor, meron din tayong sariling integrity. Di ba? Yung, for example, kayo bilang mga estudyante ko, if one of you ay caught cheating, ano kaya sa tingin nyo yung pakiramdam? Sabihin natin si Nico, 'di ba? Si Nico, nakita ko si Nico, kumopya siya kay Jennifer. Nakita ko si Nico. So, ano kaya magiging pakiramdam mo, Nico, pag nakita kita na kumopya sa classmate mo?
Kakabahan, sir.
Kakabahan, 'di ba? Kakabahan ka, mahihiya ka ba? Tititigan mo pa ba ako? Can you look straight into my eyes after that scenario?
Hindi po.
Diba? Hindi na. So, lahat tayo ganun din. So, syempre, parang a part of our self is na-impair. So, that is what we call the integrity. So, syempre, we have to exercise the integrity in all phases of the audit. Integrity natin bilang isang auditor, hindi integrity natin bilang isang tao, no? So marami kasing scoping integrity. So what we are talking here is the integrity of yourself as an auditor. So what makes an integrity for an auditor? Siyempre, you have to exercise your independence at all times. Hindi pa pwedeng ma-impair yung iyong independence kasi kapag na-impair yung independence mo, mai-impair yung iyong integrity, ma-impair yung iyong credibility, mawawalan na ng tiwala yung client sa iyo na paano yan? Ikaw pa naman yung auditor namin, ino-audit mo yung cash, tapos girlfriend mo pala yung ino-audit mo. 'Di ba? So, na-impair yung independence mo. So, syempre, ikaw bilang auditor, kung audit associate ka, nagkakandak ka ng audit of cash, tapos girlfriend pala yung petty cash custodian, girlfriend mo, dapat you have to refuse. Sasabihin mo, kung ikaw yung audit associate, you can talk to your audit supervisor or audit manager na, ay, hindi ko po kayang gawin itong pagkandak ng audit of petty cash kasi related po ako dun sa aking i-audit. Diba? So, it is your professional judgment as well bilang auditor, members of the engagement team, to talk to your higher authority or to someone higher than you para ma-discuss mo yung threats as to your independence. So, kaya kailangan sa pagpaplano, nandoon may ethical requirements. So, ano yung mga relevant ethical requirements na kailangan natin? Let's go back doon sa ating napag-meetingan the last time. So, ayan, ethical requirements, integrity, objectivity, professional competence, and due care, confidentiality, alam niyo na yung confidentiality na yun, and then professional behavior. All right. So aside from that, ano pa yung mga requirements as per PSA 300 under preliminary engagement activities? Ano pa yung kailangan? Sabi kanina,
Evaluation of compliance po.
ayan, EFED, no? Evaluation of compliance. So kailangan din natin ng evaluation of compliance. Yeah, that's correct. So lagay natin dito, evaluation of compliance. Yeah. All right. Okay. So yan. So let me just lakihan lang natin para mas madaling makita. Okay. Yeah. So under preliminary engagement activities, ano yung mga dapat natin i-consider? Evaluate, ayan. PSA 220, we have to consider that. Evaluation of compliance of ethical requirements, kailangan din natin i-consider. Ayan. Evaluation of compliance of ethical requirements, kailangan natin i-consider. Ano pa? Establishing the terms of engagement as per PSA 210. So ano yung PSA 210? Terms of engagement. So kailangan din natin itong i-consider. Doon sa preliminary engagement activities, from the word itself, preliminary, before the conduct of the audit. So preliminary siya. Siyempre kailangan mo din. Ano ba yung dapat nandun sa terms ng audit engagement? Ito lang yung scope. So dapat everything must be clear and must be crystal clear, diba? Para walang gray area both sa side ng auditor pati ng client na in-expect ni client, ay akala ko po i-audit nyo ito. Parang yan po kasi kasama yan dun eh. Diba yan yung napag-usapan natin. Eh sabi ng auditor, ay hindi naman po natin yan napag-usapan. Ito lang po yung pinag-usapan natin. Syempre sabi naman ng client, ito po yung nakalagay doon sa kontrata natin eh. Diba? So dapat lahat nung terms ng audit engagement, cleared na siya, napag-usapan na siya before mag-start or mag-kick off yung audit. Yan. Alright. So, meron na tayong preliminary engagement activities. Ano pa? Anong sumunod? Under PSA 300, requirements.
Planning activity.
Planning.
Yes, that's correct. So, unang requirement, involvement of engagement team members. Ikalawa, preliminary engagement activities. Ikatlo, planning activities. So, ano naman yung planning activities? Ano yung planning activities, class? Ano yung planning activities? Yes, Dominic.
The auditor shall establish an overall audit strategy that sets the scope, timing, and direction of the audit and that guides the development of the audit plan.
That's correct. So tama si Dominic about doon sa planning activities. Ang kailangan muna ng auditor, yun yung kanyang responsibility. Diba? Responsibility of the auditor as to planning, design an overall audit strategy. So naaalala naman po ulit natin yung iba nating napag-usapan. Tignan natin yung meeting number 4 natin. Meeting number 2 pala. No. Meeting number 5. Ayan. Auditor's responsibility. Yung auditor's responsibility na napag-usapan natin the previous meetings that we have is about the misstatements in the financial statement. Ano yung responsibility ni auditor as a whole? Ano yung responsibility niya? To provide or express an opinion in the financial statement. Ano naman yung mga responsibility niya pagdating sa error? Ang responsibility ni auditor pagdating sa error is to design an audit to detect errors, 'di ba? Magde-design siya ng audit procedures para makadetect ng errors. Pero hindi niya responsibility to prevent errors. How about sa fraud naman? Ano naman yung responsibility ni auditor pagdating sa fraud? Yung responsibility ni auditor doon pagdating sa fraud is to design again audit procedures to detect fraud. Pero hindi niya responsibility yung pag-prevent ng fraud. Nakuha po ba? So ano yung responsibility niyo doon ng auditor? To design an audit procedures na pwedeng makadetect for errors, fraud, as well as a non-compliance. So yan po yun. So at least dito, na-establish na natin, ayun yung kanyang mga responsibility. Ano naman ang responsibility ni auditor pagdating sa planning? Design an overall audit strategy. Nakukuha po ba, class? Nagigets po ba?
Yes po.
Alright. So balikan ulit natin. Dito naman sa, I think that's meeting number 6. Ito yung accepting an engagement. May mga responsibility dito si auditor. Siyempre, ano yung dapat niyang responsibility kung ikaw yung successor auditor? Ito yung mga responsibilities mo. 'Di ba? You have to communicate with the audit committees and the predecessor auditor. At ano naman yung responsibility ni predecessor auditor? To respond fully to all the incoming inquiries of the successor auditor. So, on all parts pala, 'di ba, na-realize natin sa lahat pala ng phases or parts of the audit, ang auditor meron yan mga responsibilities na dapat gawin. So hindi lang siya standard or overall responsibility or kundi meron siyang responsibility sa bawat phases. Kasi well-structured yung audit process natin. So bawat phase ng process, merong responsibility na naka-assign kay auditor. So here in the planning activities, the responsibility of the auditor is to design an overall audit strategy. So what is an overall audit strategy? Ano kaya yung overall audit strategy, class? Sabi ng PSA 300, what is an overall audit strategy? What is an overall audit strategy, class? Yes, Jennifer.
The overall audit strategy sets the scope, timing, and direction of the audit and that guides the development of the audit plan.
Yes, that's correct, no? So tama yung sinabi ni, I think, sino yun? Si Feb? Feb ba? Or si Jane?
Si Jennifer po.
Si Jennifer. Sorry, mali na naman sabi ko. So si Jennifer. Tama yung sinabi ni Jennifer na about sa overall audit strategy. So, syempre, in developing an overall audit strategy, we have to keep in mind the following. So, to supplement what Jennifer had said, dapat i-consider natin ito sa pag-conduct ng overall audit strategy or the design of the overall audit strategy. Una, we have to understand. So we have to understand the entity and its environment. So why do we need to understand the entity and its environment? Bakit kaya? So sabi ng PSA 300, kailangan mag-design daw si auditor ng overall audit strategy. At yung overall audit strategy na yon para masabing maganda yung overall audit plan, kailangan i-consider nila yung mga sumusunod na dapat i-consider. So una na dyan is to understand the entity and its client. So the question here is, why does an auditor need to understand the entity and the environment of the entity? Bakit kaya? Bakit kailangan? Yes, Jane. Yes, Jane.
Para po malaman po nung auditor kung ano ba yung applicable na procedure na dapat gawin po para sa entity.
Yes, that's correct. Kasi meron tayong tinatawag na industry specific requirements. Meron tayong mga industry-specific requirements na dapat i-consider. Kaya dapat natin pag-aralan or intindihin ano ba yung nature ng business ng client natin, ano yung environment na meron doon sa surroundings ng entity or ng client natin. We have to consider that. So aside from that, ano pa yung dapat nating i-consider, ano pa yung dapat natin i-check or bakit natin kailangan intindihin or i-understand yung entity. So aside from the industry-specific requirements, meron pa po bang iba? Yes, Feb.
Kapag mas kilala po kasi natin as an auditor yung entity po na ina-audit natin, mas magiging madali po sa atin para mag-provide ng reasonable na opinion po or ng evaluation po sa kanila.
Yes, no? So tama po yun. Kasi syempre, if we understand better, diba? We understand better the nature of the business, doon mas maiintindihan natin kung paano mag-operate yung business, paano siya nakikipag-usap with other parties, with outsider, paano mag-usap yung employees, pati yung management. So doon natin nakikita yung nature or naintindihan natin yung nature ng business. So in that way, malalaman natin, mas mapag-aaralan din natin kung ano yung mga controls, di ba? Siyempre, while understanding the entity and its environment, na pag-aaralan na natin yung nature ng operation niya, yung controls used within the business, na pag-aaralan na rin natin. Diba? So aside from that, meron pa po ba? Aside from that, siyempre mapag-aaralan din natin yung financial reporting framework. Diba? So mapag-aaralan din natin yung financial reporting framework na ginagamit ng client. Siyempre, kapag inintindi natin or we made an understanding of the entity's environment and entity's nature of operations or business, malalaman natin ano ba yung financial reporting framework na ginagamit nung client. Siyempre tayo bilang auditor, hindi lang tayo basta-basta tahimik, 'di ba? O kayo ngayon, siyempre mga accountants kayo. So, yung iba lahat kayo matatalino. So, yung iba sa inyo, mga tahimik lang, 'di ba? Tahimik pero malahalimaw kung sumagot sa exam, na perfect, 'di ba? So, siyempre kapag auditor na kayo, hindi lang kayo basta-basta tahimik. You cannot develop a good communication with your client kung tahimik lang kayo. So paano kayo makakagather ng evidences kung hindi kayo marunong makipag-usap? So syempre one way to understand better the entity and its environment is to have a constant communication with your client and its employees. So kapag hindi kayo nakapag-usap, hindi nyo malalaman kung ano-ano yung mga dapat nyong malaman, ano yung industry nila. Siyempre tatanungin nyo yun. Magkakaroon kayo ng direct inquiry. Sabihin ninyo, ano po ba yung inyong industry? Ano yung nature ng business ninyo? Okay, so sa cash po ba, paano kayo nagbabayad sa suppliers? Through checks po ba? Or cash on hand po ba yung ginagamit ninyong pambayad? Sa employee po ba? Paano nyo sila pinapasahod? Lingguhan po ba? Arawan? Buwanan? Paano sila tumatanggap ng sahod? Through ATM po ba? Or binibigay siya na cash mismo? So, ganun. Siyempre, kailangan yung maintindihan kung paano ba nag-ooperate yung business ng client. Siyempre, matatanong nyo na rin doon, ano po kaya yung reporting framework na ginagamit ninyo? Full PFRS po ba kayo? Or PFRS for SMEs? Or PFRS for small entities? So, yan, natatanong din natin yan. So, syempre, balikan natin doon yung pinag-aralan natin the last time, 'di ba? Sa ating phases ng audit, 'di ba? So, steps in audit process. Napag-aralan natin dito yung regular audit procedures. Naaalala pa po ba 'to, yung mga regular audit procedures na 'to, class? Nagigets pa po ba 'to? Ay, naintindihan pa po ba 'to or naalala pa po ba ito, class? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Opo.
Alright, so ito yung audit procedures natin. We have inspection, observation, inquiry. So isa pa lang inquiry sa dapat natin gawin. So paano natin maiintindihan yung nature ng business, yung environment ng business, or yung business mismo ng client kung hindi tayo mag-i-inquire sa kanila. So kailangan natin gawin yung audit procedure na tinatawag nating inquiry. 'Di ba? So hindi lang tayo basta-basta audit tayo doon, wala tayong kakausapin. Sabihin natin, ay, pumunta lang ako dito para mag-audit o hindi ako pumunta dito para makipagkaibigan. Wag naman ganun, no? Kailangan nyo makipag-usap kasi may makukuha din kayong information sa kanila, no? Pero you have to exercise your professional skepticism. Kasi syempre, hindi lahat ng information na mag-gather ninyo totoo. Dapat yun na, 'di ba? Syempre, you have to support one evidence by another evidence, or much better, maraming evidences yung mag-gather ninyo. So, just like what I have said, it is a call of professional judgment ng auditor kung masasatisfy ba siya doon sa evidences na nag-gather niya. Or kung hindi pa siya satisfied, maghahanap pa siya ng ibang evidences. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class? Nagigets po ba?
Yes po.
Alright. Okay. So ano pa yung meron sa overall audit strategy? Why do we need to understand the entity and its environment? Siyempre, kapag naintindihan ninyo yung nature ng client, yung business ng client, magigets nyo na rin or magkakaroon kayo ng idea, ano ba yung expected audit coverage? So, gaano ba kalawak yung transaction ng isang business? Gaano yung kalawak ng transaction ng isang business? Meron nga ako isang client ngayon. I have one client. Ang daily transactions nila ng sales is 3,000 transactions. So imagine niyo yun. Sa isang araw, meron silang 3,000 transaction ng sales. So transaction yun na, hindi yun 3,000 pesos. 3,000 transactions times 30 days. So ilan lahat nung transactions nila sa isang buwan ng sales transaction? Ilan lahat ng sales transaction na nangyayari sa isang buwan sa kanila? That's 90,000 transactions. Imagine niyo yan, class. Nagigets po ba? Nakukuha po ba?
Opo.
Yeah. Alright. So, balikan natin. So, sales transaction yan ha. Sales transaction. So, that's only for 1 month. 90,000 transactions. So, sabihin natin, nag-ooperate sila 360 days a year o 365 days a year kasi sila ay nasa travel industry. Siyempre, ang travel industry is 24/7. Walang palya. Nakuha po ba? Nagbabakasyon na yung iba, hindi sila nagbabakasyon. May pumapasok sa kanila ng New Year, saka Christmas. So, imagine ninyo, for the whole year, meron silang 32,850,000 sales transactions. Kung ikaw yung auditor netong company na to, sa tingin mo, ilan kaya yung kailangan mong audit staff para mag-check or mag-audit ng sales nila? Sa tingin ninyo, class? Apply your professional judgment. Sa tingin ninyo, ano lang to? It's your opinion. Hindi naman kailangan na tama. Can you still hear me? If you can hear me, please press number 5. So kung ganyan karaming sales transaction sa isang taon, ilan kaya lahat yon? Ilan kaya yung kailangan na na audit staff members yung kailangan diyan? Meron pa, aside from sales transaction, meron pa silang collection transactions, 'di ba? So yung collection transactions naman nila, that's 2,000 deposit transactions na nangyayari per day. So that's 30 days kasi 24/7 times 365 days. Sorry, bakit 365 days? 12 months. Ito rin pala. Ayan. So this is not 365, that is 12 months. So 1,080,000 lang pala. So 1,080,000 sales transactions plus 720,000 collection transactions. So yan, so kinorek ko na siya. 1,080,000 sales transactions na nag-occur within one reporting period plus 720,000 collection transaction na nangyari within 1 year or within one reporting period. So imagine niyo yan, 'di ba? Napakarami ng transaction. So aside from that, meron pang disbursement, 'di ba? Disbursement transaction, meron pang payroll transactions. So marami pang dapat i-consider. So sa tingin ninyo class, sapat na ba yung isang audit staff lang para diyan?
Hindi
Hindi po.
O, di ba? Hindi pa. So, that is your professional judgment. Kasi kawawa naman yung isang audit staff na mag-audit ng sales. Tapos, 1,080,000 yung transaction. Sobrang haba ng ledger niyan. Kasi na-encounter na namin yan. Hindi kaya ng bank i-produce yung isang buwan na collection, yung ano nila, bank statement. Hindi kayang mag-produce ng bangko ng Excel kasi nag-i-error, nare-reach na yung maximum number of cells doon sa Excel. So ang ginagawa nila, araw-araw sila nagba-bank reconciliation. So imagine that because of the 720,000 collection transaction that happened every year, ang ginagawa ng kanilang entity is to have a daily bank reconciliation. So, di ba tayo nga, pag nagba-bank recon tayo, buwanan, every month. Doon sa problem natin, sa problem natin sa financial accounting, every month lang tayo nagba-bank recon. Dito sa kanilang ginagawa nila, daily sila nagba-bank recon. Kasi, napakaraming transactions every day. So it needs to be monitored. Otherwise, kapag hindi sila makapag-bank recon for just 5 days, hindi na magbabalance yung cash nila. Hindi na nila mamomonitor lahat yon. Mag-work talaga sila, mag-overtime sila. So para sa atin bilang auditor, we need to understand their operation. 'Di ba? Bakit ganito karami? Bakit ganyan karami yung transaction ninyo samantalang yung ibang client namin 30 sales transaction lang sa isang buwan. 'Di ba? Minsan nga 10 lang. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class? Nagigets po ba?
Opo.
All right. Okay. So next, for designing an overall audit strategy, ano pa yung dapat nating i-check sa understanding? So meron tayong industry-specific requirements, nature of the business, financial reporting frameworks used, tama. Expected audit coverage, we have to check that. Nature, nandun na rin. Extent, ayun. So lagyan natin extent to which components, ayan. Extent to which components are audited by other auditors. So, minsan, kino-consider din natin ito, yung extent to which components are audited by other auditors. So, tayo bilang auditor, minsan, meron tayong ma-audit talaga na multinational company. Siya yung parent company. Aware naman kayo dun, di ba? Meron na kayong business combination, tapos nyo na yon. Tama po ba, class?
Opo.
Yes. So, syempre sa parent-subsidiary relationship, nagkakataon na iba yung auditor ni subsidiary, iba yung auditor ni parent. Sabihin natin, ang auditor ni subsidiary si PricewaterhouseCoopers. So, auditor ni subsidiary yon. Pero ang auditor ni parent company, si Deloitte. So ngayon, since inaudit na ni PricewaterhouseCoopers si subsidiary, tapos i-consolidate kasi yun ni Deloitte yung financial statements ng mga subsidiaries pati ni parent, kailangan i-consider din ni Deloitte ano ba yung mga dapat i-consider ni Deloitte na mga audited financial statements. Kasi syempre sila, iba-iba silang auditor, independent auditor sila. So PricewaterhouseCoopers is different from Deloitte. So iba yung kanilang audit procedure, iba yung kanilang audit process. Although meron silang pareho ng flow, iba nga lang yung details. Tapos syempre, depende yun sa auditor kung tatanggapin ba niya yung audit report na inisyu ni PricewaterhouseCoopers or ire-rework nila ulit yung audit na ginawa ni PricewaterhouseCoopers. So, with that, sa pagpaplano natin, kailangan i-consider din natin yan. We have to consider hanggang saan ba yung dapat gawin ni auditor kung siya ay component auditor ng isang group of companies na may iba-ibang auditors. So we have to consider that as well. Ano pa yung mga dapat nating i-consider? Aside from that, we also need to consider the reporting currency na ginagamit. So yung reporting currency na ginagamit nung entity na i-audit natin. So that's why we need to understand, we need to check the nature of the entity. Ano pa? Meron ako isang client. Ang isa akong client naman, nandito siya sa Philippines. So nandito siya sa Philippines, ang kanyang transaction currency is Philippine peso. Diba? Philippine peso siya. Pero ang kanyang reporting currency, yung nakalagay sa financial statement nila ay Australian dollars. Kasi yung kanilang parent company ay Australian company. Diba? So, gumagawa kami ng dalawang financial statement. One is under the Philippine peso, yun yung sinasubmit sa Securities and Exchange Commission pati sa BIR. Pero kami naman na isang audited financial statement in Australian dollars kasi yun yung i-consolidate naman nung auditor naman nila doon sa parent company. So syempre, you have to consider that as well. Ano ba yung reporting currency na gagamitin? So nakalagay rin yun doon sa terms ng audit engagement. Ano pa kaya? Aside from that, ayun. So, meron bang need? Is there a need for statutory audit? So, meron bang need for statutory audit? Ayan, statutory audit of stand-alone FS. So, ano ba yung stand-alone FS? Anyone from the class? Ano yung stand-alone FS? Meron po bang idea what is a stand-alone FS? Ano yung stand-alone FS, class? Can you hear me? Yes, Jane.
Sir, yung standalone financial statements po is yung mga financial statement po ng mga single company po.
Yes, no? So pag standalone FS, from the word itself, standalone, these are the components of the financial statements that can stand alone. So without any reference to other financial statements. So yun po yung standalone FS. Okay. So anong meron sa standalone financial statement? So, pag sinabi nating standalone financial statement, ito yung FS mismo nung isang company lang, 'di ba? So, for example, si subsidiary, meron siyang financial statement. Yung financial statement niya ay yung standalone FS. Si parent company, meron din siyang financial statement. Yung financial statement niya mismo, standalone financial statement 'yon. Pero kapag pinagsama mo yung financial statement ni subsidiary sa ni parent company, ang tawag na doon ay consolidated financial statement. Kasi we are following naman or we are applying the economic entity assumption or single entity assumption kasi parang consider lang sila as one entity, yung parent subsidiary. So, consolidated financial statement naman yon. So, pasok naman yon sa ibang PFRS natin. So, PFRS 10 ata yun, yung consolidated financial statement. No? So, yes, that's correct. No? So, PFRS 10, consolidated financial statement. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes po.
All right. So these are the reasons why do we need to understand the entity and its client. Ano pa kaya? Aside from that, ano pa yung mga dapat nating malaman to develop an overall audit strategy? So ano pa yung mga dapat nating malaman? Yes, Jane?
Yung availability po nung client, personal and data po.
Yes, no? So tama po 'yun. Siyempre kailangan nating ma-check yung availability nung data ng client. So lagay natin dito. Yan, availability of the client's financial data. Siyempre kapag readily available yung financial data ng client, we can also conduct the audit as soon as possible na kapag meron na tayo magandang audit plan. So ano-ano yung mga audit clients financial data na pwede nating tignan? So anyone from the class, ano kaya yung mga pwede nating tignan na data ng client? Ano kaya yung mga data na pwede nating tignan? So yun yung mga sources of information na pwede nating tignan, class.
FS.
Yes, that's correct. So lagay natin dito, prior year's financial statement. So makikita natin yan dahil isa yan sa sources of information na dapat available. So prior year's financial statement, ano pa kaya?
Exploring clients' facilities po.
Yes, that's correct, no? Exploring or tour on the client's facility. So some of the auditors, they do that, no? So nagkakandak sila ng tour doon sa client's facility. So habang nakikipagtsikahan yung auditor o yung mga audit associates sa client na ay ito pala yung ano ninyo, ito pala yung inyong facility, yung plant facility ninyo. Nasaan kaya yung mga asset po ninyo? So, syempre ituturo nung production manager, nandun sa may nandun sa isa pang plant site namin. Nandun mas marami doong assets, mas marami doong machinery and equipment. So, habang nakikipagtsikahan pala yung auditor sa client, nagkakandak na pala ng audit yung auditor. Siyempre magtatanong pa siya, ilang oras po nagtatrabaho ang inyong mga tao? Siyempre masasabi na naman nung production manager or production head. So isa yon sa dapat kino-consider. So habang nagkakaroon ng tour, absorb or nakaka-collect naman ng information yung auditor. So isa yon sa mga ginagawa ng auditor. So una, nire-review yung prior year's financial statement. Ikalawa, exploring or tour on the client's facility. Ano pa kaya mga pwede niyang maging source of information? Pwede rin siyang makipagtsikahan, di ba? With other people. So discussion with people within and outside the entity. So, ginagawa din yan ng mga auditor. Minsan, bago sila pumasok doon sa facility, bibili sila sa tindahan. Diba? Bili sila sa tindahan ng pagkain doon sa labas. Tapos tatanungin mo yung tindera doon, ilang years na po kaya nag-ooperate yung yung factory na yan? Tapos sasabihin nila, noon pa yan, 10 years ago pa. So at least meron ka ng idea na matagal na palang nag-ooperate yung factory na yon, yung facility na yon. So ano pa, pwede nyo kausapin yung mga employees, pwede nyo kausapin yung mga uh, job order placement na tao doon, mga casual, pwede nyo makausap. Pwede nyo rin makausap yung mga heads ng bawat department. So, depende sa inyo. Depende sa audit plan na gagawin ng inyong engagement partner o kaya ng buong engagement team. So, aside from that, ano pa kaya yung ibang pwedeng makita as source of information ng auditor? Ano pa po kaya?
Relevant publications po.
That's correct, no? Relevant publication. So, kailangan din natin yung ma-check or i-consider para maging source of information. Siyempre, di ba yung mga ibang companies, they do publications every year. Naglalagay sila, nagre-report sila sa public. Nagre-report sila sa public, pinapakita nila, ipinagmamalaki nila na ito yung aming income for the particular period. Ito yung income namin for the year. Diba? So, syempre, doon pa lang, nakikita ninyo, meron silang, meron ng income, ganito yung income. So, let us check, let's see kung yan ba talaga yun nandun sa financial statement. So, mako-confirm ninyo kung ano ba yung nire-represent nila sa public, yun din ba yung nire-represent nila sa inyo bilang isang auditor. So, aside from relevant publications, you can also check books, yung published books nila, periodicals, pwede din, ano pa, related publications as to the entities industry. Ayan. So, pwede rin natin yan ma-consider. Bakit natin dapat i-consider yon yung related publications as to the entities industry? Kasi doon makikita natin mas maiintindihan natin ano ba yung reason bakit yung particular industry is nag-boom, bakit yung isang particular industry is bumagsak. So like for example, during this pandemic time, ano ba yung pinaka heavily impacted na industry during pandemic? Anyone from the class? Applying your professional judgment, professional skepticism, ano yung industry na heavily impacted? Yes, Carl.
Yung transportation po.
That's correct, no? So, transportation, travel, and tourism. That's correct. Tama po yun. Lagay natin dito. Yeah. So, through the publications related to the entities industry, mas maiintindihan natin ano ba yung reason bakit kaya itong ino-audit natin na client bumagsak yung sales. So nakakita tayo yung about publications sa transportation, travel, and tourism. So because of the pandemic, yung transportation industry, travel and tourism industry, they are heavily impacted by the pandemic kasi nagsarado lahat ng bawat bansa. Bawal pumasok yung mga foreigners sa Pilipinas, yung mga Pilipino naman bawal din pumunta sa ibang bansa. Yung bawal tawag dito, merong quarantine, 'di ba? Merong quarantine. Dapat quarantine is lang, 'di ba? Ilang araw lang, pero ilang buwan na tayo nag-quarantine noon. So syempre, lahat nasa bahay. Yung iba sa atin naka-work from home. Yung iba naka-study from home. Yung iba vacation. Kasi wala talagang study noon 'di ba? Walang trabaho noon. As in total lockdown. So syempre lahat heavily impacted. Lalo na yung travel and tourism. Kasi yung ibang industry, they still operate 24/7 like yung mga manufacturing, mga essential items na mina-manufacture. So with that publications na makikita natin like statistics publications, pagdating sa mga industry analysis, doon natin mapag-aaralan kung ano yung reason bakit bumagsak yung isang industry. So, pwede nating i-add yan as information na reason bakit bumagsak or bumaba yung sales. Nag-drop yung sales ng isang client natin because of this type of industry nila. Yung isa naman nating client biglang nag-boom, 'di ba? Bakit biglang lumaki yung sales nitong isa kong client? Ano kayang reason? So, syempre, you have to check as well relevant publications. Sa tingin nyo, class, ano kaya yung mga industry na nag-boom during this pandemic? Anyone from the class?
Communication.
That's correct. So tama si Ron, Mark. Yung mga nasa communication, 'di ba? Communication and video conferencing industries. Sila yung nag-boom, sobrang nag-balloon, nag-skyrocket yung kanilang income. Kasi ang daming nag-download ng Zoom, ang daming nag-download ng Google Meet, ang daming nag-download ng iba-iba pa, 'di ba? So, lahat 'yan sila as in nagkaroon ng what do you call that? Nagkaroon ng malaking income. So, imagine niyo class, before you join RTU ba, meron na ba kayong email ad ninyo noon nung first year kayo?
Yung institutional po, wala.
Wala pa. 'Di ba no? Wala pang email address institutional. Kailan kayo nagkaroon ng institutional email? Nung
Ito lang po during pandemic po.
during pandemic, 'di ba? So tama 'yon. So tama si Feb. Alam niyo ba na ang isang institutional email costs 300 pesos per month? So in our class, ilan kayo sa ating klase? 40 plus, 'di ba? So 40 plus. So lagyan natin dito, lagyan natin. So yung isa ninyong institutional email account costs 300 pesos per month times, sabihin natin you are all 49. So times 12 months. So sabihin ninyo, nagbabayad si RTU para sa inyo ng 176,400 para sa institutional email ninyong magkakaklase lang. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes.
Yes po.
Alright. So, sobrang laki ng kita ni Google para sa klase lang natin na to, including me. So, sabihin niyo isama niyo pa ako kasi nagtuturo din ako, di ba? So, for your class, sa inyong section, 176,400 ang kita ni Google sa isang taon. Saan tayo makakakita ng ganyang pera, di ba? So, mga ilang trabaho pa yung gagawin natin para makakita ng ganyan. Samantalang si Google, kinikita niya na yan, di ba? Tapos, imagine niyo pa yung total population ng buong RTU. So, iba-ibang estudyante, merong institutional email, including the institutional emails ng mga nag-stop na estudyante. So, hindi naman pwedeng i-cancel yun ng RTU kasi baka bumalik yung estudyante. Diba? So, binabayaran din yon nung RTU. Alright. Okay. So, going back, ayan, ano pa yung mga information na pwede nating ma-check? So, aside from that, ayun, reading corporate. So, reading corporate documents and financial reports. Ayan. So, ano yung meron sa mga corporate documents? Yung mga minutes of meetings, kino-consider din natin yon. Kasi sa minutes of meetings, ano yung mga napag-meetingan ng mga nasa management, ng board of directors. So, nandoon yan, nakalagay doon. Ay, meron pala dito sa minutes of meetings, may disposal of asset daw. So, syempre, kayo bilang auditor, nakita niyo sa minutes of meetings na may disposal of asset, may inaprubahan na dinispose na asset. Gusto niyo makita sa financial statement kung na-dispose ba talaga yon. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes.
Nagigets po ba? Alright. So, ganun din. For example, may nakita kayo, Minutes of meetings, meron silang biniling bagong business. Another company, binili nila. So, meron business combination. So, titignan ninyo doon sa financial statement, meron bang another investment? Diba? Meron bang another investment that resulted to a business combination? So, through the corporate documents that you can found within the entities available data, pwede nyo yung magamit sa pag-start nung audit. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes, sir.
Alright. Okay. So, ayan. Tapos ano pa? Okay. Ayan, medyo na-extend tayo sa ating audit planning. Actually, ang audit planning, mga ilang araw ko to dinidiscuss. Kasi matagal ang audit planning i-discuss. Ayan, so meron na tayong involvement ng engagement team, preliminary engagement activities, planning activities pa lang tayo, number 3. So overall audit strategy, una, na-consider natin yung understanding the entity and its environment. So ayan, so number 1 pa lang pala yun. So number 2, dapat i-consider naman natin sa pag-conduct ng overall audit strategy yung understanding the entity's internal control. Diba? So, yung internal control pala ng entity, kino-consider din natin. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class? Can you still hear me?
Yes po.
All right. So why do we need to understand the entity's internal control? Why do we need to understand the entity's internal control? Anyone from the class? Why do we need to understand the entity's internal control? Although there is a separate topic for this, pero syempre kasama ito sa audit planning, kailangan na nating pag-aralan muna siya. So why do we need to understand the entity's internal control? Yes, Feb.
Para po ma-anticipate ni auditor yung mga possible po na misstatements na maganap po.
That's correct. Na? Kasi yung internal control, the internal control, it helps the auditor. No? So it helps the auditor to check for the possible risks. So meron kasi tayong tinitingnan na risks. Tayo bilang isang auditor. Ano yung mga tinitingnan nating risk? Meron tayong tinatawag na business risk. So yung business risk na yon, kailangan natin i-check. So what is business risk? Anyone from the class? What is business risk? Anyone from the class, what is business risk? Anyone from the class? Can you still hear me? What is business risk? Do you have any idea? From the word risk, diba? From the word risk itself, what is business risk? Ano kaya ang business risk? Yes, Jennifer.
Business risk, sir, are the uncertainties or threats that hinders a company, the company to achieve their goals.
That's correct, no? So tama po yan. Bakit ayan, uncertainties. Ayan. Business risk are uncertainties or risk that prevents the entity from achieving its goal, diba? Achieving its goals or objectives. So, yung mga business risk pala na yon, kung titignan natin yung definition na binigay ni Jennifer, tama po, no? Ni Jennifer, these are uncertainties or risks na nakakapagpatagal or nakakapagpahinto from the entity na ma-achieve nila yung goals nila or objectives. So this business risk, it could be internal or external factors. May mga internal or external factors pala that involves business risk. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class? Nagigets po ba, class?
Opo.
Yes. So for us bilang auditor, this business risk needs to be assessed. So kailangan pala yung business risk na yan needs to be assessed by an external auditor. Kasi kapag hindi inassess yan ng external auditor, yung business risk na yan might have a financial impact, di ba? It might have a financial impact to the entity. So, dapat ma-check natin yung business risk na yan. So, one best way for us to check if there are any business risks na nandoon, nakaabang sa business, is through understanding the entity's internal control. Kasi yung internal control, from the word itself, control nga siya. So lagay ako dito lalagay ako dito ng ano, yan, control. So yan, merong control. So let me just prepare a presentation. Ayang control. Ito yung control ng business. So, the business has an operation. So, the business operates. Business operates and the business has a control activities. May mga control activities siya. So, syempre, these control activities prevents errors, fraud, and non-compliance. So, yung control pala is a good preventor. Taga-prevent, taga-detect, or redirect ng mga risk coming from fraud, errors, and non-compliance. Kasi yung mga risk na yon are what we call the business risks. So yung business risk na yan, just like what your classmate have said, sabi ni Jennifer, uncertainties. So yung uncertainties na yan, they want to penetrate the business. Gusto nila ma-penetrate itong business na to, ng business risk na yan. So kapag na-penetrate ng business risk yung business without any control, the business might fail. So it may fail. The business itself might fail. Ayan. So magfe-fail talaga ang business kung walang control. But through proper internal control, the business may be successful. It may become successful. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes po.
Yes po.
So because of the control. Pero syempre, pag-aaralan natin kung ang internal control ba, if the internal control is good, or if the internal control is bad. Diba? Siyempre, kapag maganda ang internal control, magiging successful yung operation ng business. Okay ang business. But if the internal control is bad, okay, may internal control nga, pero hindi naman niya kayang i-prevent, i-detect, or i-redirect yung business risk, then the company may fail as well. Diba? So, kaya kailangan natin intindihin yung internal control. Kailangan natin ma-check kung okay ba ang internal control or hindi. Kasi itong business risk na ito, nanggagaling ito sa dalawang types of risk. We have what we call the inherent risk. So, ano ang inherent risk, class? So, what is an inherent risk? Anyone from the class, what is an inherent risk? Ano kaya ang inherent risk, class? Anyone from the class? What is an inherent risk? What is an inherent risk? Ano kaya ang inherent risk? From the word itself, inherent. Ano yung inherent?
Parang permanent po na nag-exist.
Yes, no? So tama si Feb. I think Dominic is also raising her hand. So, yes, Dominic.
Sir, yung inherent risk is something
Yes,
na hindi
Dominic.
natin po-prevent.
Sorry, hindi ko po masyado marinig.
Risk po siya na hindi po natin mapag-prevent. Ganun. Kaya po siya inherent kasi it exists na po.
Ayan. So, tama. Tama si Feb. Tama din si Dominic. So, tama yung sinabi ni Feb na inherent means permanent. So, tama naman. And then, sabi din ni Dominic, these are risks that cannot be prevented, which is correct. Kasi ang inherent, ibig sabihin, nag-i-exist na siya dyan. Nag-i-exist na siya even before. Kahit wala pa yung business, nandiyan na yung risk na yan. Kaya siya tinawag na inherent risk. Or from the moment na in-incorporate or nabuo pa lang yung business, may mga inherent risk na involved doon. So sila yung mga hindi kayang maiwasan because nandun na talaga yung risk na yun. So these risks, inherent risk, are normally 100%. So 100% na risk talaga sila, inherent risk. Tapos meron pa tayong isang klase pa ng risk as to audit. Sa external audit, meron tayong tinatawag na control risk. So ano naman yung control risk? So what is a control risk?
Ito naman po sir yung kapag parang yung risk na nag-exist po kapag hindi maganda yung internal control na meron po sa company.
Yes, no? So tama po yun. Yung control risks, these are risks that can be controlled. Diba? That can be controlled when internal control is good. Yeah. So control risk are risks that can be controlled when internal control is good. So from the word itself, control risk, ibig sabihin, kaya silang makontrol. Otherwise, hindi sila makokontrol. So, lumalabas pala itong business risk na to. Yan. This business risk, they want to penetrate. So, this business risk wants to penetrate the control or the business itself. Ayan, sorry. So, nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes po.
Ayan. So, this business risk wants to penetrate the business. So, lahat ng mga risk na sasala ng internal control, these are what we call control risk. So yung mga hindi nasasala ng internal control, ang tawag naman doon sa risk na yon ay mga residual risk. So yung mga residual risks na yan, it is being assessed further if these residual risks are also controllable risk or inherent risk na ba sila. So, chine-check pa rin yon ng auditors, particularly the internal auditor. Chine-check nila yung residual risk. But from the point of view of external auditor, ito lang yung chine-check natin. Inherent risk saka control risk. So yan. So yung inherent risk saka control risk, dito tayo nakaka-come up ng isang formula. So since the business risk, di ba? Business risks are risk or uncertainties na kailangan natin i-check bilang isang auditor. Itong risk kasi na to, meron niyang yung business risk na yan, it also contains what we call the audit risk. So yung audit risk na yon, yan yung pinaka-main concern natin bilang isang auditor. So from the audit risk, we come up to a formula na audit risk is equal to inherent risk multiplied by control risk multiplied by detection risk. So ano yung detection risk na yon? Ito yung mga risk na hindi kayang ma-detect ng auditor. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class? So audit risk is equal to inherent risk multiplied by control risk multiplied by detection risk. So kung titignan ninyo, inherent risk cannot be controlled. So that means to say it is 100% risk. Control risk is something that can be controlled by the management. So this one is a management's function, yung control risk. While the detection risk, this is the risk that an auditor cannot detect a possible error, fraud, or non-compliance. So that means to say that the detection risk is an auditor's is within an auditor's control. So controlled pala to ni auditor yung detection risk. Ngayon, if you want, kung kayo yung auditor at sa tingin ninyo, you want to have a 95% assurance, di ba? You want to have a 95% assurance on the financial statement, lumalabas, you have a risk appetite of 5% for audit risk. Nakukuha po ba? Nakakasunod pa po ba, class?
Yes po.
Yan. So yung audit risk mo is your risk appetite. Sabihin natin, 95% yung gusto mo makuhang assurance na okay ang financial statement. That means to say, 5% yung willing kang maging audit risk. Yan yung kaya mong risk na i-absorb. Okay lang sa'yo yan, yung 5%. So that means to say, ano yung formula natin? Audit risk is equal to inherent risk multiplied by control risk multiplied by the detection risk. Kung yung audit risk mo is 5%, ayan, lagay natin dito. Kung ang audit risk mo ay 5%, that means to say, kailangan kang merong i-assess. Kailangan mo munang i-assess. Yung inherent risk since hindi natin to kayang kontrolin dahil inherent na ito, 100% yan. Yung control risk naman, since this control risk is related sa internal control, di ba? If internal control is good, that means to say, pwedeng ang control risk may range from 20% to 10%, di ba? So, kapag internal control is bad, then the control risk might range from 30% up to 100%. Yan. Nakukuha po ba? Nakukuha po ba, class? Nagigets po ba?
Yes po, sir.
Alright, sabihin natin yung internal control pala is hindi okay. Bad ang internal control. So, lumalabas, based sa assessment ng control risk, nasa 80% ang control risk. So, gusto mo bilang auditor, ang audit risk mo lang is 5%. So, dapat ang iyong detection risk must be, ilan dapat ang iyong detection risk? Kung gusto mo 5% ang iyong audit risk, assuming ang iyong inherent risk naman is 100% at ang iyong control risk ay 80%, then how much is the percentage? Diba? Ano yung value ng percentage ng detection risk mo? Anyone? So can you compute? Kaya po ba? Can you compute, class? Can you compute?
62.5 po, sir.
62.5. So let's try, no? 62.5%. So let's try kung kaya po. So if yan, 100% multiplied by 80% multiplied by 62.5%, you get ilan po? That's Let's check. Check natin. Delete tayo. Counting. None. It's 2. Yes, that's correct. 0.5. That's 50%. 50% ito.
6.25, sir.
6.25. Yeah, so 5%. So lumalabas class ha, in order for you to get a 5% audit risk, assuming the inherent risk that you have for that client is 100%, tapos ang control risk na nakikita ninyo ay 80%. So, ang detection risk dapat ninyo is only 6.5%. So, the lower the detection risk, the lower the audit risk is. Nakukuha po ba? Kasi yung risk appetite nyo lang is mas mababa. Gusto nyo 5% lang, di ba? So that means to say, kayo yung mag-a-adjust bilang auditor. Yung possibility na hindi nyo kayang ma-detect yung error, dapat liitan nyo lang. So niliitan nyo, di ba? Kanina 62.5%. Kung 62.5% yan, that means to say 50% ang inyong audit risk. So 50% ang audit risk ninyo, ang inyong assurance for the financial statement is 50% lang. So willing kayo na 50% ng financial statement is subject or prone to error, fraud, and non-compliance. So hindi na to nagiging reasonable assurance. Ang reasonable assurance is high but not absolute. Kasi ang absolute assurance is 100%. So hindi natin kayang ma-claim ang 100% assurance. Kasi tayo bilang auditor, external auditor, hindi tayo nagsasabi ng absolute assurance. We only say high assurance but not absolute, or what we call reasonable assurance. So pwede tayo magsabi ng 98%. Kung 98% yan, ang audit risk nyo lang is 2%. So kung gusto nyo ng 2% dito class, ilang percent yung dapat ninyong detection risk? Kanina 6.25, di ba? So ilang risk ang kailangan ninyo as detection risk? So sabi ko sa inyo, the lesser the audit risk, dapat ang detection risk nyo mas mababa. Nagigets po ba? So ilan? Ilan ang inyong detection risk dapat?
2.5.
2.5. So let's try. Ayan, that's correct. So 2.5 lang ang inyong detection risk. Kung 2.5 ang inyong detection risk, then your audit, ayan, audit procedure, your audit procedures in conducting evidences must be, ano yan, dapat 97.5%. So 97.5% nagkakandak kayo, nag-gather kayo ng audit evidences. Kasi ang gusto nyo lang, ang detection risk nyo lang is only 2.5%. So willing kayong may hindi ma-detect na error, fraud, and non-compliance up to only 2.5%. So ibig sabihin, 97.5% dapat i-subject nyo to audit. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class? Nakakasunod po ba? Nakakasunod po ba? Naiintindihan po ba ako, class?
Yes po, sir.
All right. So, ibig sabihin pala, the lower the audit risk, the lower the detection risk an auditor is willing to accept. Ano ba yung detection risk? Ito yung risk na hindi kayang i-detect ng auditor ang fraud, error, non-compliance. Ang control risk kasi, although it is controllable, the risk is controllable, however, the auditor doesn't have any control for the control risk. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Yes
So
po.
walang control. Kasi sa control risk, kaninong function nito? Kay management. Sa audit, sa detection risk, kaninong control yan? Kay
Auditor.
auditor. No? So, management ang may control for control risk. Si auditor is detection risk. While sa inherent risk po, walang may control. So, that is inherent in nature na yan. So, dahil inherent siya in nature, 100% siya. Nakukuha po ba? Nagigets po ba, class?
Opo.
Alright. Okay, class. So, hindi na natin natuloy ang ating, what do you call that? Ang ating audit problem. So, let's continue next week our discussion for audit planning. Matatapos na natin tong audit planning. Medyo matagal lang siya. Siguro 2-part kasi to. Kapag diniscuss ko, baka umabot ng 3 parts. Pero the rest nun, mabilis na lahat yon. Yung audit planning lang matagal. Alright, class. So have your dinner now. Happy weekend and class dismissed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you po.